So another week down, and this upload is a little bit late. Obviously just been pretty busy with training, coaching and working, so a little bit behind on things, but this week I kind of wanted to get into some more technique stuff. I know last week I posted more about accessory movements, so I thought this week it would be more relevant to kind of go into some more technique stuff and some additional accessory movements that you can use to kind of bring up your deadlift, and then also as a by-effect your squat and bench. So going over my training so far, this week was honestly really great. I was able to push up those squats there, those fives to 240, and my deadlifts went really well, and I was able to hit 310 kilos for both deadlift sessions, my forwards and also my pause deadlifts. So that brings us to the first kind of technique thing. This is actually my top set of 4 for my first deadlift day. So you can see one of the things that I do really well is I hold the bar nice and low in my hands. One of the things that using straps a lot has taught me is the ability to kind of just use your fingertips to grip the weight. This is something that I do with mixed grip as well. And so I think using straps is a great way to teach this. You can also see here as I calm down and take my breath, I'm really wedging my hips in, and then that really allows me to get into a better position behind the bar, I guess you could say. And then you can see also I'm really driving through my quads and gripping the floor with my feet. That really just allows me to create a consistent position and build up that repetition. But going back to kind of the overview of things, it was a really great week. I was able to continue to push some of these weights. I'm really just focusing right now on pushing my top sets and not so much my back-off weight. I think this here is 270. This is my snatch grip deadlifts with 170. Not really too much up from the previous week. I'm just trying to slowly add that volume in, because if you start to really push those back-off sets too much, you kind of can build up a lot of fatigue, and the top set doesn't do this as much. It's just one set versus 6 or 7 sets. You can see there I can't catch my headphones at all. My squats are moving really well too. This is some tempo squats right here. I'm just really focusing on trying to stay in a consistent position, not push my knees back too much out the hole. I'm not really too worried about staying upright. I think there is a need for individualization with squatting, and as someone that is 6'7", it's very difficult for me to stay upright, and I think it actually does more harm than good. I was getting a lot of hip pain before when I was squatting in Olympic shoes, and now squatting in flats and just kind of accepting that I'm having some level of forward lean is really not been as much of a negative thing for me. I do get some glute tightness. This is mainly due to my frequency of squatting, and then that combined with how much heavy deadlifting that I do. So, I'm just trying to manage that and mitigate that as much as possible. So more mobility work. I've been adding in the McGill Big 3 to try and manage some of those side effects. Here's some rare bench footage. I really don't post my bench too much or talk about it that much. It's just because I really don't personally find it that interesting, but I am working really hard to try and get back past where I was before I had this shoulder issue. So I'm just trying to, again, steadily push the volume. I think that's kind of the key thing, and really just focusing on my technique, my bracing, and everything like that to try and optimize what I can get out of my bench press. As of right now, I'm really, really far away from a meet, about 28 weeks out. So right now is a great time for me to just continue to add in more volume and really just focus on building up my technique. This is a squat set of 7s, and so you can see what I'm trying to do here is just be as consistent as possible. I'm really taking my time through the set. I'm not trying to rush through to just get volume. The whole point of me doing this competition squat movement is to build up that repeatability and get some more practice, even with this high volume. But I think this is going to have a really good carryover for me. I've already noticed that I'm getting significantly stronger. Last week, the week before my deload actually, I was able to hit 551 for 5, and now I'm comfortably getting close to that, and this is only my first or second week of this program. So then on to my pause deadlifts. That was 300 kilos, horrible loading. But you can see here I slowed this down for you guys. So you can see as I'm setting up, I'm really trying to actively retract my scapula. I think this helps you to kind of cue that as you get into the starting position. If you're focusing on those things during your setup, it helps you to replicate it during the movement. I also stretch my arms out like that to practice kind of having long arms. And if you've noticed that I bounce before I go down into the deadlift, that's just because I'm focusing on flexing my quads and really pushing my knees out as I go down into that position. And that really helps me to cue it as I go through the movement. You can kind of see that a lot of these sets are very similar. You have that short pause and then onto more explosiveness. I'm really just trying to build up this bottom position of the deadlift. For a lot of people, the initial pull of the sumo deadlift is kind of the hardest part. I don't necessarily think this is the case for me, but I'm trying to build up consistency in a positive start position with hopes that this can continue, and ultimately as I get into heavier loads, I'm able to continue to start from a really strong position and then ultimately lift those weights more effectively. And then this is some Pendlay rows off of a block. My goal here is to kind of keep a neutral spine as much as it is on a decline. I'm pulling through my elbows and I'm really focusing on bracing and pulling that weight into my abdomen. And I think this can really help people that struggle with upper back tightness in the deadlifts. And this is another one, a great one that I like to use. It's a seal row with a trap bar. Essentially, it's just the same movement, but from a different angle. So it just allows you to do less weight and just continue to push the volume. But all in all there, you can kind of see that I'm just trying to continually build my volume and trying to build up some strength for the long term. As I mentioned, I'm 28 weeks out, and it would be remiss of me if I didn't do as much volume as I possibly could in order to make this long-term progress. I think when you're planning out a training cycle, you really need to be cognizant of both the short-term and the long-term implications. If you're doing 2 or 3 meets a year, you need to pick one of those meets that's going to be your main meet, and then really not necessarily train through the other meets, but just not prioritize them as much. Because if you're fully peaking for a competition, that could be anywhere from between 4 to 8 weeks. And that can really have a knock-on effect in your training, because that is potentially 8 weeks that you could have spent doing volume or just trying to get stronger. Peaking is just actualizing the strength that you already have. It's not necessarily getting you stronger. I mean, there's going to be marginal strength gains, but it's not going to be as effective as doing a strength or volume block might be. So you need to be more considerate of that when you're doing planning your training, and that's something that I'm trying to do better as I try to get to the next level of the sport. I'm trying to get to that 500 Wilks, or I guess 800 IPF point barrier now. I'm really closing in on it, and I think the biggest difference maker for me in terms of my progress this year is just going to be continuing to do this volume as long as I can. I'm finding it very, very difficult at the moment, mostly from a mental aspect. I really do want to compete again, but I'm also aware of the fact that I have longer term goals that I'm trying to seek. So try some of those exercises out, try some of those cues out. Hopefully that helped you, and I'll be back next week.